Welcome, Digital Velocity participants. Really excited to have you here today for our panel discussion that is going to be all around staying agile and adaptable in this ever-changing ads ecosystem. And I've got some great participants here to chat with us on the panel here today. But before we jump into it, right, this session is going to be all about what is going on with cookies going away, with the movement to utilizing first-party data to identify people, how to stay agile within your organizations, and what others are doing. So we want to leave you here today with a couple of tips, tricks, things to bring back internally to your organization to get prepared. I'm going to pass it around to each of the presenters, but I'm joined here today by Alyssa McDermott from Wonderman, Francis Ginto from ASICS, and Emily Wilson from Facebook. Alyssa, do you want to introduce yourself quickly and a little bit of background?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Alyssa McDermott. Wow. And I am a solutions engineer here at Wonderman Thompson. I wear lots of different hats here, whether that's analyzing data, implementing tagging, building email campaigns, you name it. I work with our clients across multiple channels and platforms to execute campaigns here in North America.
Francis, would you like to go next?
Sure. What's up, Digital Velocity? Name's Francis Ginto. I work at ASICS Digital as a tech lead in analytics. So I support business intelligence and data science as well as marketing teams through the use of Telium and Google Analytics and making sure everything is instrumented and measured properly.
Great. And Emily, do you want to round us out?
Of course. Hi, folks. I'm Emily Wilson. I sit on the partnerships team here at Facebook, and I work with a lot of different partners, including Telium, to help drive adoption of some of our most complex signal-related solutions. So really excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So welcome, everyone. Welcome all the attendees. To get us started, given the changes that have come down from browsers recently, from regulators with the adjustments from iOS 14.5, ITP 2.0, Google's plans to remove cookies at the beginning of 2022, there's a lot of stuff going on in our space. Emily, this question is going to be for you, but how have you adjusted, or you as Facebook adjusted, to continue to support clients in reaching their customers?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So obviously we know that the ads ecosystem is changing really dramatically. As you mentioned, there's new regulations, there's browser changes, there's device changes, et cetera. So what we at Facebook really encourage our customers to do is think about and prepare for the long term by figuring out ways to secure and strengthen the data that they share today. So rather than having to be super reactive every time one of these new policies or regulations roll out, we really try to encourage our customers to think super long term of how do they ensure that those whatever changes come down the pike, whether it's ones that we know about that are on a definitive timeline or ones that come up ad hoc, that they are in a position to make sure that their advertising is uninterrupted by those changes because they've been able to figure out ways to secure and strengthen the data that they're sending to platforms like Facebook today. So we're really trying to think in both sort of a defensive and offensive position. So defensive against these changes, but also encourage advertisers to think about how securing and strengthening that data today can actually have really immediate performance impact and benefit for the business because they have access potentially to more sources of data, or they're able to optimize to pieces of data that they didn't previously have access to.
Yeah, I think those are all great tips. The idea of being both defensive and offensive in your approach to customer data and really planning for the long term or planning early. And Francis, I know that's something that we've chatted about before and that ASICS has done a really great job at, of just how you guys put a plan in place months ago to start dealing with a lot of these changes. Can you give the audience kind of a high level of what you've done?
Yeah, so planning for us really started with just taking a step back and looking at what we're measuring today, right? Determining the highest value events that we want to keep tracking in spite of all these legislative or privacy related tech changes. And so the reason we did that is so we can actually focus all our efforts on solving those first. So prioritizing the issues that we want to work on, doing those few things correct versus doing a lot of things maybe not as well. And so the first thing that we did there was once we had an idea of these high value events that we want to keep persisting, we then adopted all these privacy conscious protocols from all the different partners. Facebook's limited data usage, for example, was an easy one to do right off the bat. Google has also had this consent mode for a while with their new tags. And so kind of just unifying all of these consent management tools under our tag management platform like Telium has really helped us kind of like capture those like first easy steps to do. And then kind of like the more long-term thing that as an organization we were working towards and keep working towards is reviewing and reworking all of our in-house procedures in terms of like retaining customer data, kind of fulfilling deletion requests and the like. That's more like the long-term stuff.
Awesome. I think, again, great tips and great advice on how you've started out. Alyssa, to take it a little bit more broadly, obviously working at an agency, right? You get to work with dozens, if not hundreds of clients and around this. And we at Telium have seen that there's been a wide spectrum, obviously, of clients that are very prepared, like Francis and the A6 teams, to clients that just haven't been keeping up with the news. What's kind of that consistent message or that more broad-based message that you're taking out to clients to either raise awareness or get them prepared for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we are coming off such a weird year, right? And everybody in general is just trying to find that new normal. And we here in the agency life, we're trying to do the same thing, especially when it comes to data privacy. So I think the general message here when we're talking to our clients is kind of expressing a sense of urgency here. There's little time to spare when it comes to addressing first-party data management strategy. And the companies that are going to do this sooner rather than later are going to have a distinct advantage, right? So there are two things that we recommend primarily when we're approaching that with them. So one is having a really good CDP partner like Telium, who's already out in front of these changes. And then the other part is investing in an identity resolution service like the ones that we offer here at Wunderman Thompson.
Awesome.
Ultimately, having that first party data management strategy is key.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that we talk a lot about is like, hey, you've got to begin managing your first party data or collecting that first party data. But it isn't always easy getting clients to feel comfortable or providing that to you, right? And so the idea that we keep trying to hammer home with our customers, our partners, with everyone is like that value exchange of why would I provide a brand with my data, right? Or with my data on a regular basis. And Francis, I know that's something that we've chatted about a lot and that you guys have done a really good job of just figuring out, okay, how do we improve this data exchange or this value exchange with our customers so we have that coming back and forth? And so would love kind of your take on this for the team and some of the awesome programs and platforms that you guys have developed to really build this up, I would say far in advance of some of these regulatory changes coming in.
Yeah, no, that's I'm happy to share. And of course, like the only reason we were able to develop it so far in advance was because, the understanding and the level of support that we've gotten from the C-suite was all there to start with. So, A6 is now, because of that, in a lucky enough position that we have such a tight ecosystem built around, the apps, the products that we offer, their in-store experience, and even the loyalty and down to e-commerce. So I think at the core of all of it, right, is like all the teams have kind of like gotten around and worked together to set sort of the customer's needs first, along with their expectations of the brand, and using that as a framework of taking our approach to first-party data collection, right? Because if you do that in a kind of like transparent way, then that value exchange becomes more meaningful and a lot more based on trust between you and the customer. So, for example, we would have at the height of the pandemic, masks were kind of in high demand, right? And as well as like running masks weren't really like all that in market yet. So there was like very limited availabilities. So obviously one easy way to, gain kind of like your customers' trust in that example is like by providing lotteries. So like you would enter your PII and you'd be in for a lottery to, get a mask, basically. There's also like private and exclusive sales. And also like, it's also about giving back, right? So we have medical and first responder discounts, and for example, that we implement through Sheer ID. And then for our apps, we have like pre or like post race kind of like nurturing programs as well. So there's many, many ways in which, as long as you are very upfront in what you're using the data for, then that value exchange becomes really rooted in trust, and you're not going to have too much of an issue getting your customers to share as much or even as little data as they would like with your brand.
I love that idea of the mask lottery. I actually didn't know that you guys had done that, but I think that's a genius idea, especially early on, right? And my wife's a big runner. She uses a runtime app all the time, right, for being able to track a lot of that data, which I think is another great thing that you guys have put into place, right, to help people out. And so, I commend you guys on all the great work that you've done there. And I think a lot of innovative ways that you're approaching both data collection, but also transparency in that data collection. I think that transparency, and Emily, I'm going to pass this one back over to you because I know that is a big piece that Facebook is really pushing, right? It's like data transparency, trust, really being about the small business owner and making sure that they have access to contact all of their customers as well. What are some tips that you guys have for organizations around how to build that data exchange, how to keep that data flowing, to really enable the great advertising returns that they're getting on your platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at Facebook, we feel very strongly that personalization and privacy can coexist. So we know from many studies that consumers want to feel like businesses understand what matters to them. And when they have an experience with advertising, whether it's on Facebook or on the internet, anywhere else, or in a magazine, whatever, it's important to them to feel like the advertising has a sense of who they are, and they want to see products that they care about. No one wants to see a bunch of ads in their feed that are like totally irrelevant. And the way that we enable that to happen, Facebook or any other ad platform, is through data. So I think we feel very strongly that it's important to keep those two things in mind, that you can have like a very privacy first experience for a customer while still enabling a business who is interested in their potential business to reach them with an ad that's really relevant to their experience. And I would say, Francis, your examples are like best in class. We really do encourage our customers to think about how can they provide some value to the end consumer to share their data. And so the examples that you shared are like top notch. So making sure there's a clear value exchange. In addition, obviously, it's great if your ads are personalized, but that's not a particularly meaningful value prop to a customer. If you're saying like, well, give me your data and I'll make sure you see good ads, that's not really super meaningful. So adding those additional value props to make sure that the way that you're super clear about how the data is going to be used, but you're also giving them a reason to share more information with you. So things like Francis mentioned, also we see a lot of activity in sort of loyalty programs. We see a ton of those sort of starting up over the last year or so with customers who want to make sure that there are customers who want to make sure that their own customers are providing some value to the end consumer in terms of sharing their data with that particular business.
Yeah, and I think that's very true, Emily, right? Like the utmost piece that everyone's trying to get to is, hey, how can I do omni-channel personalization or personalization in every touch that I have with the consumer? But to your point, right, it comes down to now you have to be upfront with them about how you get that data so you can do the personalization, but then taking that one step further of attaching value to it as well, not just saying, hey, I'm going to show you the shoes that you just saw, but hey, you're getting put into a lottery for a mask, right? Oh, you're a first responder. I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to give you special offers around that, right? Getting those pieces of data, whether they're first party or zero party in nature, and being able to build that profile to empower personalization, but taking that one step further.
And it creates like a really nice relationship between the consumer and the business, where there's like a mutual trust established. We've talked about this, but there's a value exchange established, and it's like a great relationship between the business and the consumer that doesn't exist if you're not fully transparent about your data practices. If you're trying to collect data without providing a benefit, that relationship is just really a lot harder to build.
Yeah, completely agree, right? Data and trust are now going to go hand in hand. And Alyssa, kind of to that point, I know we've talked a lot about advertising here. What other areas of the MarTech stack are now going to be affected by all of this? Like, where are you guys seeing, hey, there's other pain points that people aren't thinking of yet that they now need to start pivoting towards?
Yeah, I think there's two specific areas that come to mind. I think as Emily and Francis have already mentioned, we're seeing big changes in user experience in general and just how that's being affected. Our job as advertisers is to put ourselves in our customers' shoes and ask, would I want this? And then shape our websites and apps and campaign experiences around that. And then I think the other big piece of that that's going to be affected outside of targeting is reporting and analytics. That's very much going to be affected as well.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of double down on that reporting and analytics piece. So, obviously Google came out last year with their same site tagging, and all of a sudden people were like, oh no, I have all new users, my returning users are gone. How are you helping companies figure out how to adapt to some of these reporting changes? How do they prep internal teams for this? Because if I'm the CMO and all of a sudden my dashboards look completely different, you know, what what's going to happen, right? I'm not going to be happy about that. So, what are some recommendations that you might have around?
Yeah, it's a good point. There's definitely a shift in mindset that has to happen for reporting and analytics as we move away from looking at our metrics purely for quantity and move towards looking at them for their quality, right? So for example, reach numbers might look totally different once you shift completely away from third-party data, but we're looking at those numbers now with the understanding that this is a higher quality audience and we're reaching even if it might be lower in volume. So with that in mind, there's definitely going to be some changes in how we benchmark and how we present our KPIs going forward. I think we're also going to see a lot of brands leveraging experience analytics solutions as well. So they're still relying on that first party data, but that allows you to dive a little bit deeper into the why behind those actions and get to the heart of those frustration points in their digital experiences.
Yeah. And so do you think people are gonna be doubling down on kind of that known audience then and really perfecting that experience of people that have shared data with them?
I think so. And I think we're also going to be getting a little bit creative in how we touch on those unknown users as well.
Yeah. Francis, would love your take on it. Obviously, being on the brand side and having built a lot of this out, how have you guys kind of adjusted or pivoted some of the internal reporting that you're doing?
Yeah, well, for us, it's primarily about the change management, right? So being responsible for all the business intelligence around all the ASICS brands all over the world. Obviously, we have a responsibility to be the thought leaders in our organization. One of the more kind of like recent trends in people's like inboxes has been all these kind of like emails that are just like telling of like all these changes to measurement and what it means and tons of acronyms being thrown at people. So it's very easy to just get lost in all that noise. And so at ADI, we try to, be the thought leaders and kind of guide all of our stakeholders through it in a less technical way, but still in a way where they'll completely understand why this change is happening and what the new metrics and provide them guidance on how to use these new metrics. I think core to that is that we try to frame it as much as possible in a way that it's not so much as a restriction. It's not like something that orgs have to suddenly deal with and then suddenly it's passed. We try to frame it as something that's new and is something that's like, and one day is just going to be another process that they'll be part of their day-to-day, and so I think because of that approach, we've been able to get people to be more, internal stakeholders to be more proactive in adopting these new metrics and standards. And yeah, I think that would be like the advice that I would give.
Yeah, be proactive, start early, right? Get buy-in across the org. Did you find that it was, did that take one meeting? Did that take 10 meetings? Like, how much kind of time did you spend educating some of these internal teams to kind of get them to that point of buy-in and comfortability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is a message that needs to be repeated. People aren't going to get it just through one email or one call. You have your weekly or bi-weekly statuses with them. You always have to start each call with, okay, these are the new metrics. As Alyssa's point earlier, like these are why your KPIs look different today. Here are the kind of like new KPIs that we're working that you might want to start using. And another one of Alyssa's point is like starting to use user experience metrics. So getting people more acquainted to interpreting and understanding what that data means is something that we've also been doing. So it's not a one and done, and it's going to be it will be much more effective if it's framed as like a new process going forward, not just like I get a lot of these emails where it's just like top 3 tips on how to survive ITP, as if like doing those 3 things will get you through and then you don't have to think about it again. It is definitely a paradigm shift in how organizations operate.
Definitely. And so, Emily, not to throw you in a spot of saying, hey, Facebook's got CAPI, which is a great tip to surviving ITP, but we have seen it across our client base as being one of the pieces that we know clients need to move to and need to start adapting. Obviously, looking at that across 7 million customers plus that you guys have, and hundreds of thousands of partners probably that you have as well. How have you worked to scale that message? And obviously, the level of education of organizations is really widely varied. So, how can we help the folks that are on the line today both communicate the reason to start now, as Francis said, start early, but what's kind of your perspective on that? And then what are some of maybe the risks of waiting and delaying until January next year, when they're a month out from all of a sudden Chrome's going to switch it off?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that we think about it is, I sort of alluded to this earlier, but twofold. One is like, there's potential if you, and I can start actually by giving a brief overview of what we're talking about here. So Facebook launched a product last year called Conversions API, which is essentially a way for businesses to send data directly from their server into Facebook. So bypassing the browser and sort of eliminating the dependence on the Facebook pixel and on third-party cookies, which, as we've discussed, are sort of not long for this world. So we're really excited about this solution because it gives businesses this opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to like make their connection, their data connection with Facebook a lot more reliable. And so that's the one thing we try to push super heavily is like, yes, all these changes are happening. Some have timelines, some don't. But if you're trying to not be reactive and you're trying to make sure that you're insulated from whatever sort of whims that a browser or a regulatory body sort of undertake over the next several years, like the best thing to do, to Francis's point, is to get integrated with Conversions API today. So that you can start sending your data in that more secure way, and you kind of don't have to think about the myriad of changes that might come down the pike. At the same time, we also try to remind people that the pixel and sending data via cookie is limited already. So there's browser connectivity issues, there's ad blocking, the fact that you're limited to only sharing data via the pixel that's happened on a website. And so when you expand and start sending data via Conversions API, you're not subject to those ad blockers or connectivity issues that you may have been with the pixel, and you're able to send additional potentially down funnel events that you weren't able to send through the pixel. So we see this, with businesses that drive leads on Facebook. The thing that they optimize for via the pixel is the lead submitted, but the thing that they actually care about, the real business outcome, might be a phone call that gets made by someone on their sales team. And there's no ability for the pixel to recognize that that's happened. So in addition to this sort of defensive play, there's a ton of value that a business can get from sending their data via server right now. In that they can send these additional down funnel events, they can optimize for real business outcomes that they care about, and they can see performance benefit immediately, even when they set it up redundantly with the pixel. I think the other note I would make is like we rely really heavily on our partner ecosystem to help us drive this message in market. So we know that we have tons of partners, whether they're agencies or CDPs like Telium, who have a ton of influence with customers, potentially more influence than we do because we're fairly new to this space. And so we rely, like I said, really heavily on our partner ecosystem to help reiterate the message in market, to create urgency among brands, and to guide advertisers through the onboarding process to Conversions API or other products to help them adopt quicker, and help them really understand like why they should move on it right away.
Yeah, and I think that's very important, right? You touched a number of key pieces there, right? Of hey, there's performance improvements. Hey, it has added benefits outside of it. One of the pieces I think we haven't really chatted about today, and I want to just get Alyssa your take on it really quick, was just the idea of, hey, what about some of those offline conversion events that are happening maybe through a call center or maybe through retail? Those have been things that a lot of brands traditionally haven't shared with media and publishers. Melissa, are you seeing kind of a movement towards brands wanting to share kind of that full funnel data to really optimize, or like, where do you think that is at in the maturity life cycle today?
Yeah, I definitely see that happening more often now. Here at Wunderman Thompson, we have something, a proprietary identity resolution service called Resolve. And Resolve helps us use or recognize behavior patterns in customers in order to personalize experiences in CRM, e-commerce, media, without ever having to share that personal data, right? And what's really interesting about that piece is that it is in the client's proprietary private server or data lake, right? So we're not having to send that out anywhere. But yeah, I mean, I think that's we're seeing that happen a lot more, and we're trying to get data and our analytics right to recognize people the way people do. So adding kind of a human element there.
Yeah, and I think the human element or people-based marketing, that's going to become really important, I think, going forward. We've got about 2 minutes left here. So I do want to kind of do the proverbial, hey, where's the industry going type question, as well as what's that tip to get started. So Francis, I know you're not a fan of the top 3 tricks and tips and tricks to kind of get started, but like maybe give the audience what's that one that's worked best for you as well. As we've talked about today, everything is changing right now, and it's changing at a really swift pace. So like, give us a prediction of where you think it will be or what the biggest obstacle might be in 3 years.
Sure. I mean, in 3 years' time, we're probably going to see a lot more resurgence in data modeling, right? To fill in the gaps that measurement and all these regulations and tech limitations are going to leave behind. I'm also predicting to see a lot more involvement in privacy engineers and privacy lawyers. Kind of right now, they're pulled into processes rather than like being a core part of it. So I think in the next 3 years, almost every pod or squad, if you will have at least someone who's always thinking about privacy. And I think that's also a good point to like pivot off of, which is like every partner that we work with today or that you're going to work with in the future is going to be more privacy focused. And you got to make sure today that everyone you work with in terms of like a partnership perspective is with the program and does understand that privacy will be the number one thing in the next 3 years.
I think that's important. Privacy is going to be key. Alyssa, what's your take on both of those pieces?
Yeah, I think he's exactly right. Investing in a solid CDP partner like Telium is just going to be critical moving forward. I think that's our number one piece of advice for getting started here. And then maybe the second one is investing in that identity resolution service as well.
Great. And Emily, if you want to round us out, one tip, 1 3-year
Sure.
prediction, where do you personally, and as I can't tell where Facebook thinks it's going in 3 years, but where do you think we're going?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add to what Alyssa and Francis said. I think for sure everything is moving in the direction of increased privacy and a focus on privacy, and Facebook has really leaned into that, and we're really excited about sort of the opportunities that presents. And there's obvious challenges, but there's also opportunities to rethink how advertising works from like a fundamental level, being more upfront with the value exchange, like we talked about, and providing a reason for people to share more information. And also, to Francis's point, thinking about how do we offset the data that we might have had access to in the past and make our machine learning and things like that a lot smarter with less data. I think those are really exciting opportunities for us. I'm going to pitch Conversions API. Obviously, we think if you're advertising on Facebook today and you rely on the pixel to provide information and that informs your advertising campaigns, whether it's in measurement or optimization, you should integrate with Conversions API as soon as possible. So like I said, you're prepared for these changes. And the good news is we have a network of partners like Telium who can make that really easy for you. So that would be my main action item.
Perfect. I think a lot of our clients are seeing success in it. Great case studies, results coming out. So I couldn't agree more. Francis, Alyssa, Emily, thank you very much for joining us here today at Digital Velocity. And for everybody watching from home, thank you for joining us here as well. We hope that you have a great rest of the day for the sessions that you're going to be attending. And please, I hope that you found value in this. If you did, I think all the presenters here would welcome any outreach or any discussion afterwards. So please feel free to ping us on LinkedIn and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.